Today we're going to go over physical and chemical properties and changes. So a physical property is any property or change that is observed that does not change the substance into a completely different new kind of matter. A chemical physical or change is a property that you can observe or change that happens that changes the substance into a new substance. So key here, a new substance is formed. So here are some examples. Here is a physical change. We're going to cut up a piece of metal, and when we're done cutting it, ask yourself, is it still that same piece of metal, aluminum in this case? If the answer is yes, and we don't have a new kind of matter, it means it's a physical change.
Here's some aluminum, and we've left the protectants on that aluminum as well.
So they cut holes in that piece of aluminum, but it didn't change the fact that it's still aluminum. No new substance was formed. It is a physical change. Here is an example of a chemical change. Right now we're burning magnesium ribbon and it glows with a super bright light. Remind me, I'll do this when we get back into class. It's blinding. Now, what you saw that was left over was just ash, and I'll show you that in class. So it's no longer magnesium metal. It's not a piece of metal anymore. It turned completely into ash. It is a new substance forming, okay? So the ash is really magnesium oxide, which is a powder, and we started out with magnesium metal. So we definitely have a new substance, and so it's a chemical change. And burning, flammability is a chemical property. In order to observe if it will burn, we actually have to change it into something new. Changes, physical and chemical, here are some examples. Physical, changing state, going from a solid to a liquid to a gas. If I take any kind of substance, I can change its state and it's still the same substance. I can dissolve sugar in water. If I dissolve it, it's sugar water. So some people would say that is something new, but ask yourself, can you get it back by just physical means without adding any chemicals? Well, I could put that cup of water outside for a couple days. All the water would evaporate and it would leave the sugar that I dissolved in it as pure sugar again. So I can get my substance back. Cutting something, polishing something, we just saw those examples. A chemical change, rusting. If I take metal and it rusts, it's very porous and flaky. It is no longer that same metal. So iron turns into iron oxide when it's rusting. Cooking. Is it the same when you put it in? Now, I don't want you guys to get too caught up on this. Just remember, cooking is always a chemical change, right? So if I put bread, it's dough in there, and then I get a loaf of bread out. That seems very different and obvious. We have some chemical reactions going on. That's what the bubbles are in your bread. But what trips people up is they say, Mrs. Ruane, I'm cooking an egg, and when I'm done cooking it, it's still an egg. We still call it an egg, but the white has now turned, instead of clear, it's turned white. And that is actually changing the protein in the egg. It's called denaturing, and that's a chemical change. If I burn something or explode something, I'm turning it usually into ash, and that's something new. So here is a chemical change right here that I burned, and you can see this is no longer wood. Maybe I have some wood left. I didn't finish burning it, but it turns into ash. I have a chemical change. How do you know if it's physical or chemical? Ask yourself, is it the same substance? Another good question is, can I get it back? Can I get this wood back? I cannot. So it changed into something new. Physical change over here, let's just look at water. Water, solid, liquid, gas. Well, ice, that's solid water. So it's still water. If I melt the ice, I have liquid water. It's still water. And if I heat it up and it all goes into air, you have humidity, which is gaseous water in the air. It's still water. So since I still have the same substance and I can get it back, it's a physical change. Some of you might say, how do I get this vapor back out of the air? Well, you guys do it all the time on a hot summer day. You put down your glass, and on the outside of the glass, because it's cool, it takes that water vapor and condenses back into liquid on the outside of your glass. That's condensation. Properties, examples of properties. Boiling point. If I boil water, it's still water, it turns into gaseous water, but I haven't changed my substance, so it's a physical property. If I look at the color of something, I haven't changed it. That's a physical property. Luster is shiny. That's what luster means. If I look at something or I shine something up, I haven't changed like a gold band. I've just made it shiny. So density is also a physical property. Chemical properties. Flammability. If I check it out, if it burns, I've changed it into something new. Toxicity. If I ingest toxic chemicals, they actually kill me because of a chemical reaction. And then I've changed the chemical. Okay, so that is a chemical property. If it's corrosive, that is also a chemical property. As it corrodes, it changes into a new substance. Evidence of chemical change. There are certain things we can see that can tell us a chemical reaction might happen. It doesn't always work perfectly, but if something gives off heat, we probably have a chemical reaction. Here I'm burning something, it's giving off heat. If I see bubbles, that means a chemical reaction happened. It's releasing gas. So certainly if I blow bubbles in a pool, that's not a chemical reaction, but here's an Alka-Seltzer tablet. Those bubbles are a new substance that is a chemical reaction. If I see light, here's a fireworks show that is exploding something, that's a chemical reaction. And here's also light when I burn something. And the last evidence of chemical change is smell. Sometimes you might smell that a chemical change is happening. A color change. Here is a rusty bridge. It had paint and now it's turned brown rust. That's an evidence of chemical change. And the last one, which we'll talk about in later chapters, but you need to know the definition, is a precipitate. So here, I may have had two clear liquids, but when I put them together, a solid forms in solution and it comes out like rain. Rain's a precipitate. That's actually a solid coming out of air. Here, our solid is coming out of solution, and that is a huge indicator that we have a chemical change. So make sure that you know that definition. So chemical changes are very difficult to reverse. What's happening is we're taking two substances. Here is methane and oxygen, and they're burning, okay? That rearranges the atoms, and that's why we create new substances. So this rearrangement of atoms makes the new substance, and now these atoms are chemically bonded together. And it's very hard to reverse things. They don't want to go backwards because they're usually reacting to get to a lower energy state, and that's where they like to hang out.